All right, we're recording.
Okay, so you just want me to stop you anytime something's not clear? Or
I'm going to try to explain this thing. It doesn't really even have a name. And I'll do my best. If you have any questions, ask away.
Okay.
But the goal of this is for me to practice and for you to learn about something and for me to get feedback on what makes sense and what doesn't.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe you've heard of derivatives. Derivatives are financial things. Like, for example, there's a futures contract, which means if you buy a futures contract, you have the right to buy some commodity in the future at some price, and you can use that or not. Or you could buy options. There's a call option, which gives you the right to buy a stock, say, at some price in the future. There's a put option, which gives you the right to sell a stock at some certain price in the future. And these are financial contracts related to some asset. Could be a stock, could be a bond, it could be interest rates, it could be foreign currency, all kinds of stuff.
So a quick question.
Yes.
Are those future prices guaranteed?
Yes. When you enter into a futures contract, you promise to sell some commodity at some price in the future.
Oh, okay.
And traditionally why people would do this is there's two reasons. If you're a producer, you can hedge your risk. You can lock in the price. You know what price you're going to get from that, so it's easier for you to plan. You don't have to worry about prices dropping a bunch.
Yeah.
On the other side, if you're an investor, you can try to make money by using your knowledge or your predictions about prices of things to try to make money in that way.
Okay.
With call and put options, you have the right but not the obligation to exercise the contract. So. And this kind of matters into what I'll explain. But if you have a put option, which is the right but not the obligation to sell, you would want to exercise that if the price of the stock was lower than whatever price that you had, because you could sell it at that higher price.
Yeah,
if the price was higher, of course, you wouldn't exercise it. And traditionally, how the purposes for these are what we talked about: hedging risk, right, managing your risk. Or speculating, trying to make money in the future.
And can I ask, is there any difference between the kind of people who would go for their background in terms of background that would go for the call and put option or a different kind of option?
That's a great question. In general, for those kinds of things, the people who use them are financial professionals. They're not an everyday investment.
Yeah.
They're becoming more one, mostly because of apps, and this is relevant to what I'm going to talk about. The way they work and the way that you use them might be too complicated or require too much knowledge or capital or understanding to make that work well. So, but how they do come into contact with people who might use them is, you can think of them that way, but maybe a better way to think about them is they're tools to make products. Think of finance not as a service, but as a manufacturer. And they can make things, and they can try to sell these things to the customer. Just like you make an iPhone and try to sell an iPhone, you can make a financial product to sell to a person. And they use derivatives as part of the components of those products.
That makes sense.
So you can imagine if you live in a world where interest rates are really low, somebody that has money that they want to invest might want higher return if a bank or your broker or whoever came to you and said, hey, I have a thing that pays 8% interest unless the price of this one stock goes down by 20%.
Right.
And of course you would emphasize 8% interest, right? Not the thing about the stock. And the client might say, oh, that sounds like a good deal. I can't get any interest like that at all. I will take that interest rate. What you do as the banker then is you can take different financial products. Mostly you can take a bond and you can take a put and you can take some stock and you can use that to manufacture a product that will do that for the client. You can't change interest rates.
And
you can't build a thing.
Does that imply a higher risk for the client?
Yes, it does. Because you're offsetting higher return, higher risk for the client. Now the bank, but interestingly, it does not imply higher risk for the bank. So you can use this put to kind of manufacture this thing, but part of the magic is there's a mathematical formula that tells you exactly what price a put should be at, and
Okay.
it gives you a way by having some stock, and you can buy or sell depending on the price of things to make sure that you don't lose any money on the transaction.
Right.
And since you know that as the banker and you have access to buy the stock, you can manufacture this thing that could be win-win. Maybe the stock price will not do that drop, and therefore the client will get above interest return.
Right.
But it's not like you lose money of that. You've used this formula. It's called Black-Scholes, and you've used your put option to manage that risk away, and you're making money by selling this put to the client that you used to pay for those things.
Yep. That's quite clear.
So again, the main takeaway here, I think, is that yes, you can use derivatives to hedge and to speculate, but they can also be made to build products. And in some ways, finance, like many other industries, is marketing. It's building things and then marketing them to people. And sometimes they get into trouble for that when people lose a lot of money. And sometimes, and there's an example in this money stuff that I read, actually the product was too complicated for even the bank to understand, and they lost like $300 million.
Well, the bank lost 300.
The bank did because they thought they knew what they were doing to get this thing, but they couldn't do it for that.
Is that common with derivatives?
That's a great question. I think, in general, I don't know the answer to that overall. Derivatives have been, like, if you look at the 2008 financial crisis, there were these CDOs, which were these derivatives around mortgages and mortgage-backed securities that maybe people did not understand. But a good, I heard, and this was like I don't know their name. It was a professor like at MIT or somewhere. Derivatives, when the market conditions are good and stable, derivatives actually make things safer because they add liquidity. They make the system able to manage itself. But in times of volatility or crisis, they make things way worse because they increase leverage. They put all this other fuel into the system. So they can be helpful, and they can also be very harmful, and that happens. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well,
okay. See how long it was.